When you experience a few IBS symptoms and then start thinking the worst, your mind can take off in a million and one directions. And before you know it, you've become frantic with worry and panic about what's going to happen and start believing that the worst is going to happen. Your thoughts feel out of control and your IBS symptoms can escalate with each passing minute. Now, whilst you may be feeling very alone, I want you to know that this is actually a pretty common pattern. And in this video, you're going to learn how to get a handle on that tendency to jump to conclusions following a very simple 4-step process. But first, can you relate to this story? So one day, Emma is sitting in a work meeting and she suddenly feels her stomach start to tighten. Her thoughts immediately start to race. What is this pain? Is this something more serious? Maybe my doctor's missed something. Maybe it's cancer. Maybe it's an ulcer. I wouldn't be in this much pain if it wasn't something serious. As she sat in the meeting, she just couldn't concentrate and she started to worry. She worried about whether her doctor had missed something. She worried about whether her stomach was going to get worse and she'd have to go home and tell her boss. And she worried about what she would do if something more serious was found. And the more Emma started to worry, the more aware she was of her stomach tightening and the pain that she was now experiencing. And fortunately, Emma hadn't yet made the connection between her thoughts and her IBS symptoms. She didn't realize that worrying about her symptoms was actually firing up her body's stress response and making her symptoms worse. And if you're new to understanding the impact that stress can have on your IBS, then I'd recommend you watch the video, which I've linked on your screen now, and I'll also link it down below in the description. Now, when it comes to stressful thoughts, jumping to conclusions is a thinking pattern that has us believing that events and situations are more threatening and overwhelming than they really are. Because when you jump to conclusions, you are essentially overestimating the chances that something bad is going to happen, even if the actual likelihood is either uncertain or relatively low. This is what Emma was doing when she assumed the worst about her stomach pain, and her mind leapt to worrying about whether her doctor had missed something or whether she had cancer or an ulcer. Now, of course, not every IBS flare-up is related to what we ate or how we thought or how we felt. But it is important to keep in mind the impact that your thoughts can have and your reaction to an IBS flare-up, which can either make you spiral out of control or help you move through it in a much calmer and controlled way. Because when we think extreme thoughts and assume the worst, it can lead to extreme reactions. And whilst it can feel only normal to have your first thought be worry, we forget that this is just one type of thought that we can have. We forget that there are other ways to think about a situation because we've been used to thinking a certain way for so long. So here are just a few examples of thinking the worst. My IBS will never get better. I'm going to fail that job interview. I won't know what to do. I won't be able to do it. I must have upset my friend because she hasn't called me back. And I'm going to mess this up. But what if there was another way to see things? Because being able to step back and look for alternative ways of seeing a situation can really help to dial down the volume on your response or reaction. And look, looking for alternative ways of thinking and seeing things does not mean looking at life through rose-tinted glasses and seeing everything as sunshine and rainbows. Because let's be honest, when you're in pain and discomfort, thinking positive thoughts just doesn't feel believable. What it does mean, however, is opening your mind up and considering whether there are other ways to see a situation. What could be an alternative interpretation or meaning to what's happening? So let's go through this 4-step process together on how to start getting control over always thinking the worst, and in turn, helping to reduce the impact of stress on your digestive system. So step 1, identify your thoughts. Because we can't change what we're not aware of. So I want you to become aware and identify your thoughts during difficult or stressful situations. What is that chatty part of your mind saying to you? What are you thinking during that time? And if you have trouble finding and identifying the thought, then you can look for clues by noticing how you feel. What am I thinking that is making me feel anxious? What am I believing about this situation, which is behind my body feeling really tense? What am I expecting to happen? You may also discover that you worry because it actually helps you to feel more in control over situations that are largely outside of your control. You see, as humans, we love certainty. We want to be in control because the opposite makes us feel vulnerable and powerless. And so sometimes we worry as a way to react to life's uncertainties because it's the only option that we have. So whilst worrying can feel uncomfortable and stressful, it's your brain's way of at least doing something. Unfortunately, though, this pattern isn't particularly helpful and can actually cause a lot of problems. So what is it that you worry about? What situations do you worry about the most? And do you notice that your worries are often expressed as a prediction or expectation? Let me know down in the comments what worries you notice coming up in your own life. Okay, so once you have a list of your thoughts and worries, it's time for step 2, and that is calculate the initial odds. This is when you are going to calculate the odds that the negative event that you predicted will happen. Now, in many cases, there is an assumption that whatever it is you're worried about is 100% going to happen. But is this really true? Is it true that something more serious has been missed when it comes to your IBS? Is it true that you won't be able to do something or you'll fail? Is it really true that you upset your friend if she hasn't called you back? While jumping to conclusions helps to reduce that level of uncertainty you feel, it does so at the expense of increasing your anxiety levels. Remember, extreme beliefs cause extreme reactions. So realizing that your thoughts are just thoughts. They are guesses, they're not facts. And this is an important skill to learn when it comes to getting control over your IBS. So what are the odds of that negative event or that situation that you're worried about happening? Now this could range from 0, where there's no chance, to 100, where it's definitely going to happen. Notice what number you give it. And notice that when it comes to predicting the future, we tend to overestimate the bad and underestimate the good. Okay, on to step 3, where you're going to examine the evidence. Now, if worrying about something is an absolute prediction that something will or won't happen, then you should be able to find evidence to support that worry. And if a prediction can't be supported, well, then it can hardly be considered a fact. And this is really an opportunity or invitation for you to choose a different way of thinking. For example, let's say that Emma is getting ready to go out and enjoy lunch with friends, and she starts to feel her stomach gurgling. She starts to hear those noises. And those noises and those sensations that she feels triggers these automatic thoughts of, here we go again, I'm going to have to cancel lunch, my friends are going to hate me for pulling out at the last minute, and they'll probably stop asking me out as I'm always letting them down. This is a good example of future events disguised as facts. Although Emma doesn't know for sure how her stomach will feel or how the lunch will unfold, she assumes that her stomach gurgling means that everything will be ruined. Emma treats her thoughts as absolute facts, but instead she can challenge these thoughts. What's the evidence that this is going to happen? And what's the evidence that it won't happen? What could be a different way of looking at this situation? What could Emma think and believe instead? So instead of assuming that her prediction of events is a foregone conclusion, she could remind herself that there have been times in the past when her stomach gurgled before and she was okay. She could remind herself that she actually doesn't know what's going to happen. And in the past, when she's felt those uncomfortable stomach sensations, she was able to calm her stomach by taking some time to relax, doing some deep breathing exercises, and remaining calm. So when Emma paused to challenge her thinking, she realized that her prediction was just that, a prediction and not a fact. So this brings us now to the final step, which is step 4, and that is updating the odds. So what are the realistic odds of this occurring from 0 to 100? And it's okay to say that you don't know. Notice that this number is lower than the number you gave in step 2. And notice that the only difference between these two numbers are your thoughts and looking at things in a different way. Now, if you want to download a free worksheet on how to apply these 4 steps to your own thinking, then you'll find a link to access this resource just down below. Remember, by taking a step back and looking at things more objectively, you can consider your response to a situation from a calmer perspective. Now, this is just one technique that you can use to challenge unhelpful thinking, especially if you're someone who thinks the worst about things and jumps to conclusions. But what about those thoughts that blow things out of proportion and where you catastrophize, especially with your IBS symptoms? Well, in this next video, you'll learn how to reframe your perspective and stop letting these thoughts sweeping you away. And if you want to learn more about my private programs and how to join the Calm Gut community, then check out the links just down below. So thank you as always for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.